I had everything I needed. Like life was good. Now I've got all this other stuff that I really wanted. There's higher highs and lower lows.
Which I translate into, there's, you have times when sort of that adrenaline, noradrenaline, endorphins, that thing, it's really maxed out and it feels fantastic.
Fucking great.
It's great, right? I mean, why do people take meth? I haven't taken meth. It feels great, right? I mean, people do these things for a reason.
Well, drugs have their tolerance. And to get back to that point.
You keep. But
they say about heroin, a drug I've never done, but they say it's chasing the dragon, right? You're always trying to get back to that point. You can never get there.
It's unless you take fentanyl, right? And then, right? I mean, and then you die because you're, right. So I think that homeostatic, sort of that reference point in terms of the fiat brain, we've escalated. We've over the course of generations and centuries, it's gotten higher and higher. And even over those hundreds of years, or even just, for individuals, you have a certain reference point. It doesn't work anymore, so you up the ante. It doesn't work anymore, so you up the ante. But it takes a toll on your body. In my paper, I cited some statistics about heart attacks. It used to be that heart attacks were the dominion of 60 and 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, right? It's now the dominion of 30 and 40-year-olds. Like, what the hell is that about? So my belief is that's because there's just too much cortisol, too much adrenaline in our systems. And a lot of it is because we need speed. We need more and more just to feel okay. And that is a function of fiat money. It's a function of a credit and debt economic system that essentially pushes us and facilitates us doing more and more. Like the whole idea of a credit score makes me want to vomit. Nails, head spin around, The Exorcist, the whole works. Like the idea that you should aspire to having a higher credit rating so that you can go into more debt and destroy your nervous system. Like that's fucked up.
Yeah, that is fucked up. Okay, so how does Bitcoin fix this?
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And over the course of time, when I came to this realization that Bitcoin fixes this, I literally freaked out. Like my friends, of whom I have a few, they, and I've written like these little things and I give them to them. And they're like, most of my friends are liberal left ideologically. And they're like, but environment, but, libertarian, but, ransomware, et cetera. And I'm like, you gotta understand, beyond Alex Gladstein and sort of his case, and beyond like, for example, I have a lot of friends who are, women who are pro-choice, and I said, Bitcoin will be an interesting thing, an interesting material way to transact if indeed abortion becomes illegal in certain states, and if you talk about it, if you pursue it, if you're a doctor, your bank account will be seized, just like Trudeau seized the bank accounts of the truckers, et cetera. I think Bitcoin fixes this because if we get to a point where nobody can game the monetary system, everybody has, you can't be dishonest anymore. Right now we have deep fake videos, right? And they're getting better and better. It's like nobody can trust anything. Our former president, Donald Trump, can just say, that's a lie. And people will say, well, it must be a lie. Oh, they made this video, that's a lie.
But Bitcoin doesn't get rid of deep fakes. It doesn't get rid of Donald Trump lying. It doesn't get rid of those things.
I believe that, because we're talking about collective memory too.
Yeah.
I believe that over generations, not only will the Bitcoin protocol vet information as well, sort of be an information transactional network, but we will get to a point where the memory of our fiat brains will fade.
Okay.
So that it's
like in an evolutionary stage,
yeah.
Kind of our hopes and expectations 300-400 years ago would be quite simple. Our hopes and expectations now is that not everyone, but people want to be like rich, successful, or just relatively well off, or do a particular job, yada yada, and chase the money and chase debt to get there. Under a Bitcoin system, it doesn't eliminate it, but it just reduces it.
Well, I don't.
There will still be ambition.
Right. So Jeff Booth, right? He always talks about it's impossible, very hard to analyze the future because you're in the present, and that's the paradigm. Right?
And it's distorted.
And and it's very difficult to have imagination because your imagination is based upon what you see now, and you're influenced by that. So when I think about Bitcoin, I think, okay, let's have lots of imagination. So let's think of a time, 150 years from now, where my daughter's great-great-great-grandchildren are living in a world that over the course of generations, the memory of irredeemable currency, the memory of debt and credit as a way to, as an accelerant, as a neurological accelerant, has gone away slowly. And once that collective memory fades, what are we left with? A lot of people, this is where I take issue with libertarianism. I think in some ways libertarianism is saying, I just want to do what I want to do, and I don't want anybody to really control me. I just want to be free to do what I want to do. And okay, I understand that, but we are nothing without everybody else around us and on the planet. It's not we want them to do what we want them to do or tell them to do, but we want to be able to relate to them and to commune with them and to interact with them.
I don't think they aren't ideas that aren't. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
You're probably right.
Yeah, I think you're talking a little bit like a libertarian. I feel like perhaps because you feel left leaning, and often libertarians feel like they're more on the right side of the political spectrum. That's something you're trying to push away from. But I also feel like you're talking like a libertarian. I
don't think you're wrong. And I believe that there's truth in the fact that because I grew up in a community liberal left and sort of that's my frame of reference, that sometimes when I hear folks, espouse libertarian ideals, I look at who they are and I say, well, you're not really You're not really talking about personal freedom. You're using personal freedom as a way for self-aggrandizement. So I think that you're probably right.
But there is right libertarians, there's left libertarians as well. I feel like you talk from the libertarian left.
I would call it the communitarian left.
Okay.
But maybe we're parsing words. I think it's having, like, when Bitcoin provides me with this unbelievable sense of hope and imagination, because if we can get rid of, over the course of generations, a debt and credit-based financial system, this idea of growth, and we can slow down, then our neurological systems slow down. Then that reference point slows down. It doesn't mean that technology can't continue to advance, but it means that we slow down, we get healthier, and more people are living the life that you lived in that year, that blissful year, but they're not thinking of it in terms of, I had this blissful year. It's just life. I walk 5 to 10 miles every day.
Me too.
My knees and ankles don't love me for it anymore because I played too much soccer, but
football.
That too. If I say football, it just doesn't sound right. But I do it because it just sits in my body right, and it slows me down. And I do have this belief that Bitcoin provides us with, once the world slows down, we get back to that, in the last part of the paper, back to the garden that Joni Mitchell was talking about.
Interesting. Talk to me about fiat money as a dialectic monolith. Bitcoin is the benevolent solution.
Right.
This is in here from my brother. My brother's a researcher on the show, and he said he enjoyed that article.
Oh, good. Thanks. Yeah. So actually, I put it as an addendum in the right. So the idea of a dialectic is you have a thesis, and then you have an antithesis that pushes back against it. The antithesis becomes the thesis, right? So, and then it's like that cycle. So, right, so like the Woodstock generation, they become the Wall Street bankers, and then the new children are pushing back against them, and then their children become whatever, the crypto people, the people on YouTube who do those silly crypto, like the videos about like, oh my gosh, Luna's going to 1 billion, that kind of stuff.
Like Pomp.
Right. Where did he go, by the way? Like it seems like it's only his brothers now.
What are you on about?
Pomp. Did
I
he
have
disappear?
no idea.
I don't know.
They just look very similar.
Maybe he's accepted that he's number 2 now.
Yeah. Well, he should. I mean, yeah.
He should.
Yeah. But Bitcoin is the absolute idea. And the absolute idea in this dialectical theory is that it breaks the cycle of the dialectic. So when we become a hyper-Bitcoinized standard, no longer will the children have to push back against their parents and sort of this cycle, because the absolute idea will break us out of that, and again, it's fiat money informed, right? So the reason that it's fiat money informed, it's because all the kids, they go to Woodstock and then they are compelled to join the human race, and then they get jobs, and then they become lawyers, and they become financiers, and all of a sudden they've eschewed that whole existence that they had that was so whatever it was, and they've become part of the, got to get more, got to make the money, etc. And the beauty of Bitcoin is that it breaks that fiat's dialectical cycle, and it becomes the absolute idea, where the dialectic ends. There was a book written by Francis Fukuyama, who wrote a book called The End of History. And he wrote, essentially his thesis was that when communism fell and the Soviet Union fell and that all went away, that was the end of history. Now we were just going to have liberal Western democracies, and this was the paradigm that was going to exist forever. And my argument is that Bitcoin is the end of history. If, over the course of these generations, I mean, I'm talking pretty big swaths of time, if we are fortunate enough to become a hyper-Bitcoinized world to the point of our collective memory of fiat and what fiat has been and is, and our collective memory of credit and debt as a way to run the world goes away.
We reached the singularity.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure I agree with this one point, though. So in a hyper-Bitcoinized world, money is no longer an expression of power. I disagree with that, because I think it's human nature to, not for everyone, but certain people, to want to accumulate power or express power. Yeah. And we will have different levels of wealth, and some people will express power with that wealth. Yeah. That one I don't buy. But I buy the potential that the swings or the gaps between the rich and the poor are smaller. So the scale at which people can express power will be different. And I also believe people will find it easier to revolt against expressions of power as a collective.
And I come back to neurology.
Yeah.
I believe, I wrote a piece once about these 4 words: feel, believe, think, and know. And it's interesting I used to do this exercise with my students. Like, what do you feel? What do you believe? What do you think? What do you know? And I would pose questions to them, and they would say, well, I know this to be true. And then I would say, are you sure you know it? Or do you just believe, we would kind of play that. I believe that in the future, in a Bitcoinized world, how we express power changes. And I don't have, obviously, any data to back this up. And part of it is, hopefulness, and part of it is trust, because I don't see human beings as being, I don't believe in the idea that human beings are by nature aggressive and by nature exploitative. I think that that's a rationalization that the fiat world and and sort of people in power are able to use to defend a certain belief system.
I'm not sure. I think the males are aggressive.
Testosterone,
yeah,
adrenaline. But again, back to neurology. Like, what if we got to a point in a hyper-Bitcoinized world, where
collective Zen state?
Well, where over the course, again, like, this is big chunks of time where adrenaline and the expression, like the expression of adrenaline and the feelings generated by it didn't work. Like people who were aggressive were so alienated from the mainstream that it wasn't, people who had power and tried to exploit others based upon that power, the rush that they might have gotten was so, it didn't work anymore.
Well, we kind of have that at the moment. If you're aggressive to the level of criminal violence, you are excluded from society.
Right.
But also we have aggression within competitive sports, which is celebrated.
Right.
We have aggression, political aggression. We have business aggression. I think the extremes. My brother always said this thing to me when I was a kid, and I like it a lot. I've always bought into it. He said, "Life is about averages. If you go and get drunk, you're gonna have a hangover. If you want to go and eat a load of sugar, you're gonna get fat. But if you go out and run, you're gonna feel good." He's like, the hard things you get the benefits from, and the easy things you get the negatives from. So you've got to try and get that even state. I feel like the end of times of fiat, we start to see these crazy charts where, whether it's Lawrence Lepard or Lynn Alden or any kind of macro analyst, they're sharing with us like crazy charts with relation to money or derivatives of money or parts of the economic system. As the system is starting to break, things are getting extreme. I see the opposite can happen, whereby in a Bitcoinized world where we have no distortion of money, things start to level out a bit more. We get more into the averages and away from the extremes. And I can see that with your point in terms of the expression of power, and I can see that on the previous point, with regards to aggression. I'm not sure it goes.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, these are ideas that are, I would think, pretty far-fetched. They're far-fetched in the sense that I'm extrapolating well out into, Star Trek land.
Yeah.
Right? Like when Captain Picard says in one of the movies, well, this woman says, who's been from the past, she says, well, how do you make money in the future? And Picard says, well, there is no money in the future. We don't do things for money. We do them to better ourselves and humanity. And she's like, what? No money. So I feel like for us, we look at Star Trek and we say, or, Picard, and we say, well, that's just science fiction. And I say, yeah, but Bitcoin is this fusion of science fiction and an evolving reality. And it's impossible to know what that evolving reality could look like. Like literally in a world in which this experiment with commercial, with credit and debt, and then this really messed up experiment with irredeemable currency, if that goes away, and I believe it's going to take a long time to go away. It's not like we're going to wake up one day and governments are going to say, well, we're just going to, it's going to be a mess. As that collective memory fades, who knows how it'll impact us neurologically, and who knows what we'll become.